Geodnet in a way has a big first mover advantage because this functionality is just brand new to the marketplace. The ability to put high precision location services into a consumer product is just a brand new concept, and we have brand new infrastructures. And over time, people are going to realize this is a fundamentally more reliable way to build networks. I think the Web 2 community oftentimes looks at it and they hear the word crypto and they think about, oh, this person's putting it on their home, it's not going to be reliable. But when you factor in the redundancy that you're creating and the fact that you're using all kinds of different pathways back to the internet through different ISPs, through different wireless networks, on different power grids, you're actually inherently creating a much more robust network than you would if you did it in a centralized way. The scale that we've been able to grow, I mean, you think about it, 2 years, we've gone from first stations being installed about 2.5 years ago to where we are today. We're the world's largest network. Nobody in 20 years of doing it the centralized way, nobody's got as many stations up with as much coverage as Geodnet has. It's an amazing thing.
And plus, I feel like any of the skeptics also underestimate the power of the crypto nerd and how meticulous they are about setting these things up. You're in good hands. You're basically in the hands of like IT professionals around the world to get this stuff set up.
Yeah, exactly.
You set one up at your house, turns out to be an ideal location for it. Plus, if you're a crypto nerd like me, you're earning a couple $100s in tokens each month from running this thing. It just seems like, again, DePIN in my mind is just this win-win across the board. Welcome to the Andy and Friends podcast. I'm your friend Andy, and in this episode, I talked to Mike from Geodnet. Now, Geodnet is a super interesting crypto DePIN project that deals with satellite location data, and it makes it incredibly accurate. We talk all about Geodnet, what it is, how it works, how they built this network that has grown so fast, and how in demand and lucrative this data can be. Plus, how you can get involved and take advantage of this opportunity as well. I personally think that looking at Geodnet right now is a pretty massive opportunity, and after chatting with Mike, I only got more excited about what they are building, so let's jump into it. And here we are in the episode with Mike. How you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Andy.
Yeah, well, it's been a pretty cool opportunity to meet a lot of people here at Consensus, and that's what you're here for. So we get to meet in person and talk about Geodnet, DePIN, all the above.
Sounds great.
So let's start off with, for those who don't know who you are, who are you? What do you do with Geodnet?
My name is Mike Horton, and I'm the project creator of the Geodnet network. Geodnet is a kind of next generation location service, next generation GPS service that provides 2 orders of magnitude higher location fidelity than XYZ, used in all kinds of different industries. And we're here at Consensus meeting folks that we can partner with and learning about all the cool stuff going on Web3 and DePIN as well.
Yeah, cool. So let's explore Geodnet a bit more, because that's a pretty high level, explanation of what it is. So I'd love to dig into each of the different pieces. So maybe walk us through, if someone is very unfamiliar with it, what you're collecting, how you're collecting it, that kind of stuff.
Right. So Geodnet, like any classic DePIN network, is kind of a two-sided system. On the one side, we have the Web3 community, which is setting up what we call satellite miners, which is actually a GNSS reference station that can account for variations in space weather. And you mount those devices up on the roof. We have a hex system that sort of helps you figure out where's a good place to get good earnings from your Geodnet station. And that station takes that data and contributes to our broader network, which is now actually the world's largest network of our class of network called RTK. And we'll talk about what RTK is more, but that data is used by RTK users. And so RTK users are people who need precise location. So it could be anything from drones to robotic mowers, to farm tractors, to your cell phone, to your car, anything that wants to get better than, 10 foot or so accuracy, which is the best GPS can do, and would like to experience sub-inch accuracy, which is what an RTK service like Geodnet provides.
Very cool. Yeah, I have one of your miners or hotspots or whatever you want to call it at my house. And though, everybody who is from the last crypto cycle and you got into Helium, you'll probably be familiar with like the hex on a map kind of system. Is very similar to that. And that, you're going to you want coverage in all these places, and you kind of encourage people to have coverage in as all these geographical locations. So why is the GPS data currently, only accurate to 10 feet or so, and how are you fixing that?
Yeah, so GPS consists of a collection of satellites. GPS is the US brand of satellites. There's also Russian satellites and European satellites and Chinese satellites. The whole collection's referred to as GNSS. And they're out there pretty far out in deep space, and they transmit a signal from deep space to the Earth. And as it travels along, it goes through our atmosphere. Our atmosphere is actually electrical in nature, and there's ionosphere and troposphere. And that electrical nature of the atmosphere interacts with the GPS signal, kind of interferes with it, essentially. And by having these reference stations, you're able to account for that. By accounting for those real-time variations in the atmosphere, in the ionosphere and the troposphere, that's called what is called real-time kinematic. You compensate for that. So the station on your roof, Andy, is providing a reference point that can observe those variations in the atmosphere, and then another user who's using GPS can kind of dial in to that correction stream and enjoy 100 times better accuracy. And this type of thing's been used for a while in applications like construction and survey, where you can imagine, 10-foot accuracy when you're building a house, that ain't going to cut it. And, they're fundamentally grounded on the idea of where are things in space, needing inch level accuracy. But now there are many new applications of this type of technology. It's gotten through the efforts of the Geodnet community, the service has gotten very affordable, the coverage has gotten very good. Through the efforts of people in the cell phone and automotive industry and the semiconductor industry, the chipsets to handle this type of signal have gotten super cheap. So you can imagine sort of anything that needs location can dial into the Geodnet network and take advantage of this huge increase in accuracy.
Very cool. So when you say space weather, is that literally the interference and stuff within the atmosphere that you're accounting for?
Yeah, space weather is literally, we had just a big solar storm a week or two ago, right? It was in the news. That was an extreme event. There was a solar flare. So the sun is this burning nuclear fire that creates, is a plasma itself, and it creates these big magnetic fields, and it's called the solar wind. That comes in, it rains down on the Earth and interacts with the ionosphere and troposphere and causes this electrical activity in the atmosphere, which literally causes variable delays and distortion to the GPS signals. And that is, when you're sitting there on your phone, you see this sort of dot moving around, that's space weather for you.
Oh, that's cool. So, with the current accuracy of GNSS, and it's funny, before I had encountered Geodnet, before I explored this, I kind of just assumed, all those satellites are GPS, but very American point of view
Yes,
to call. So GNSS. Can you get the higher accuracy and higher fidelity with just simply more satellites, or is the only way to do it with the application you're kind of doing, or how?
Yeah,
what ways
to
around
actually really get the high accuracy, you fundamentally have to compensate for this factor. It affects all of the satellites the same way. You really can't avoid it. Even low Earth orbit satellites that people are talking about, which will do some great benefits to the positioning industry, and we're involved in that, but still they're sitting outside these what they call the E layers of the atmosphere, ionosphere, troposphere, and you just have to compensate for that in order to get the high accuracy. There's really no way around it.
Yeah. That's, so it seems like, that's, having that kind of extra accuracy is like incredibly important. So when did you start Geodnet?
So we came up with the idea, and I can kind of give the origin story a bit about how we looked at doing this with Web 2. It was incredibly expensive. We did see what helium was doing, and we realized that this was sort of before DePIN was a word, that this could be a good way to solve this problem. It's an age-old problem in the field of navigation. It's been around. People have tried everything in their brother to get away from having to put out all these base stations, because everyone in Web 2 land, even if I gave you the base station for free, it's still incredibly expensive to create a dense network of these things. So we sort of saw, look, maybe a blockchain incentivized model could work. I took the idea to a very conservative community, the Institute of Navigation GNSS Plus conference, which is where a lot of the deep thinkers in satellite navigation come together, present academic peer-reviewed papers. And we presented, and I thought, okay, people are going to go crazy. This is blockchain, crypto. No one's going to like it. We got the best presentation award, and subsequently have been published multiple times in all of the GNSS-related publications. And the industry really wants it. And the industry really has embraced the idea that this is a way to solve the long-term problem. And maybe they don't necessarily all love crypto, but they realize, like, putting up infrastructure costs money, takes time. it's difficult. And this way, if you just look at the internet, right? The internet is a decentralized system. It works beautifully. In fact, GNSS is sort of decentralized. I mean, your phone is relying on Russian satellites, and at the same time, there's all this political tension. No one's suggesting your phone shouldn't rely on Russian satellites as well as US satellites. So the community accepts this decentralization, and as part of how location services work today, Geodnet's just taking that to an extreme and making the best type of accuracy, the best performance that you can possibly get from these existing assets that are in the sky and space, and making that readily available to everybody.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, that is what you're describing is why I love DePIN. I feel like if you're a startup or something and you have some kind of infrastructure, you need some kind of data set, you need something, there's nothing quite out there like the DePIN model because, I mean, why wouldn't you run one of these if you're going to make passive income every month and be incentivized to actually do it? Whereas, I mean, what would you do otherwise? You buy a bunch of hardware, you hire a bunch of people to go set it up.
Yeah, you rent spaces from like the self-storage companies, or you do fencing, or you go to the cell tower companies, and you find out the rents are enormous. If you were going to do like a cell tower, you have to be on the very tip top. You can't be on the bottom. Of course, that's the most expensive place to rent. They want you to bring your own internet. They want you to have survey drawings. They want a city inspector to come out and bless the thing. I mean, the cost exponentiates very quickly, and you need a lot of these stations to get perfect worldwide coverage. I mean, you can look at the map. There's still plenty of empty hexes out there for Geodnet to fill. Yeah, at least a factor of 100, more capital efficient, and then it's providing a decentralized service. And over time, people are going to realize this is a fundamentally more reliable way to build networks. I think the Web 2 community oftentimes looks at it and they hear the word crypto and they think about, oh, this person's putting it on their home, it's not going to be reliable. But when you factor in the redundancy that you're creating and the fact that you're using all kinds of different pathways back to the internet through different ISPs, through different wireless networks, on different power grids, you're actually inherently creating a much more robust network than you would if you did it in a centralized way. So it really checks all the buttons: cost, coverage, reliability. There's no sort of downside to it. And the scale that we've been able to grow. I mean, you think about it, 2 years, we've gone from first stations being installed about 2.5 years ago to where we are today. We're the world's largest network. Nobody in 20 years of doing it the centralized way, nobody's got as many stations up with as much coverage as Geodnet has. It's an amazing thing.
That's super cool. And plus, I feel like any of the skeptics also underestimate the power of the crypto nerd and how meticulous they are about setting these things up. And like you're in good hands. You're basically in the hands of like IT professionals around the world to get this stuff set up.
Yeah, exactly. We see a very good attention to detail. We did start off, looking at it the Web 2 way. We put up some backbone stations for some of the services that rely on stations out on remote islands and things that are out there. And it's tough to keep them up because you're paying rent on a very, annual basis. You may have a contract and all these things with SLAs, but the fact of the matter is nothing can replace that crypto nerd that is looking at their earnings every day and who really cares and really has a passion for the project, wants to see them succeed. Passion is a very important part of the whole blockchain and crypto community, that commitment to make these things work.
Yeah. So if you had, rented the top of a cell tower, placed one there, I'm assuming, high up, that's probably a pretty good location for one, but, does having a 10, 15, 50 on rooftops in the same general area, is that greater than the single one at a high point?
Yeah. So one of the unique things I think that differentiates what Geodnet does from, say, DY networks is elevation isn't really a key thing in Geodnet. Clear sky view is. So you want to be on a stable location without trees, without nearby buildings that are taller than the location of the antenna. But once you have that, being 10 feet up versus being 100 feet up provides no additional benefit. Actually being closer to the ground in some ways, tends to be a more structurally stable place. So there isn't a big benefit for being up high. There's a huge benefit from being away from 4G cell towers. So the cell tower location is actually quite tricky because the LTE bands are actually very nearby the GPS bands. And while the signal levels that come in from outer space are like minus 150 dB, meanwhile, you're near a 1,000 watt transmitter, right? That's trying to get, it's blasting out. It's a licensed, super powerful radio. You don't want to be near it. It'll cook you, right? So putting something that's super sensitive next to something that's super loud, you can just sort of see the problem. So cell tower locations turn out to be not very good locations. What turns out to be super good is single family homes without too many trees. That tends to be a very good location. You're actually near a lot of the users. You can think about people doing robotic mowers, people doing automotive applications. Actually, those are the people that are consuming the data. So it's inherently really great to get that coverage through residential properties.
Yeah. Plus, you set one up at your house. It's turns out to be an ideal location for it. Plus, if you're a crypto nerd like me, you're earning a couple $100s in tokens each month from running this thing. It just seemed like, again, DePIN in my mind is just this win-win across the board, and that's why I love to see these applications. So, if traditional GNSS is 10 feet of accuracy, what is Geodnet enabling?
We're enabling inch level accuracy, even sub-inch accuracy. So, typical RTK performance is they call it 1 centimeter plus 1 ppm. It's technical, but it means that you're 1 centimeter accurate in XYZ plus 1 extra centimeter for every 10 kilometers you are from that reference station. And if you have multiple reference stations in an area, you can actually get a little bit better performance and so on. But that's the rule of thumb: 1 centimeter plus an additional centimeter for every 10 kilometers you are from that reference station.
And then could you explain RTK?
RTK is a technical term that is what people in the industry call this technique for improving the accuracy. Stands for real-time kinematics. So real-time means that you need the GPS receiver that's going to get the centimeter accuracy wants to get the data live because that space weather is changing second to second. It changes over a grid spacing of 10 kilometers. It changes second to second. So you need a real-time, and they call it kinematic because the kinematic piece is actually the kind of dynamic element that's going on in the atmosphere. It's moving, right? Kinematic. So you're compensating for that kinematic motion. I don't know why they picked that term. It's a little too technically jargony, but it is what it is, and the industry's been doing it for a long time, so it's called RTK.
Okay, very cool. So before Geodnet, before you saw this issue and you said, okay, blockchain, DePIN, this model could fix this, were you into crypto?
I was not super into crypto aside from Bitcoin. So I got into Bitcoin a while back, really saw, the US government printing all this money and digital gold, bought into that concept. So I got into that early on. We met in one of our crypto blockchain co-founder, David Chen, sort of through the idea of, how could we do this through blockchain-based network, and he's really lit the way for us. He's a kind of Ethereum OG. He worked on building his own layer 2 early on, did very well, then kind of crashed out, but he's actually built blockchains, has a good team behind him, and that's been the element of Geodnet on the blockchain side. It's been really brought by one of our co-founders.
Very cool. And sorry, what year did Geodnet start?
So we did that conference in September 2021. We started first installing miners in about March, April 2022. So a little over 2 years and a couple months since the first stations went in to now over 6,500 registered stations. The largest Web 2 network in the world, something like 5,300. So it's really, and it's still growing very quickly. Still a lot of empty super hexes that have higher rewards that need to be filled. Those are very important. That coverage is a major factor in Web 2. The data side of our success, coverage, is definitely a big thing that we work on growing all the time.
And your Web 2 equivalent that's grown to plus 5,000 sensors or antennas out there. How long have they been in existence?
More than at least 20 years.
Wow. So in 2 years, you already have more deployment.
Yeah. And the other great thing is that because these networks, and there are also state networks and then some government networks overseas that have been at it since the mid 90s or late 90s, 2000 timeframe, started putting up stations, they've evolved. So there are all different kinds of hardwares and antennas, different firmwares, different receivers. A lot of them don't receive the newest signal. So GPS has gone through an upgrade. There's this L5 signal that's super useful in urban environments and places with trees. There's the new Galileo signals. A lot of the stations on the ground in these older networks, they were put up before those satellites were in the sky, so they don't track them. If you connect to a station that doesn't have the signals, the satellite signals, you can't make use of them. So their full performance isn't there. So one of the really unique things about Geodnet growing so quickly is we're a fully modernized network. We have all the satellites, all the signals, and that's a huge benefit to our Web 2 customers that are deploying new things. They're getting the latest chipsets from Qualcomm or ST or MTK that have all these great signals to take advantage of. But if the base station networks don't have those same signals, they can't leverage them. So Geodnet not only is the largest, it's also fully modernized, which is super unique in the industry. It's a great value proposition for Geodnet.
Yeah, that's super cool. And the and another thing I love about the actual antenna and the setup itself. I mean, how 5, 10 watts, 15 watts. It's pretty low power,
2
right?
watts.
2 watts. Yeah. So I mean, you plug it in, and like once you have it properly set up, you'll never think about it again from a power perspective, at least, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious. I haven't done this myself yet. I've only seen other people do it. I was just kind of curious if you like this, or if you're not a fan of this. But people use their antennas for other projects, and they like split it and use it for Geodnet and other ones. Is that bad for you? Do you like that? Do you encourage that? What was your thoughts
We
on
don't love it. We put out a video that there are some technical risks in doing it. You can weaken the signal. If you hook up these splitters incorrectly, you can end up frying the antenna. In general, look, there's nothing we can do about it, and people want to do it and study it. That's their prerogative. Do we love it? No, we don't. But and there are certain considerations, and you want to do it right if you're going to do it. But yeah, it's certainly, that's part of it being a decentralized network. I mean, people are going to install things and do things they want to do, and that's fine overall.
Yep. Yeah, I guess that's the downside to the DePIN models. You do have tinkerers, and you do have
Sure.
people who are financially motivated. Yes, I haven't looked into that whole world, but I was just kind of curious your thoughts on that. So I want to talk more about this data, because this is, I mean, in my mind, most of DePIN is like, it's a data play.
Yep.
You have people who build the infrastructure for you, who build the network for you. They're incentivized. You can build very quickly. On the podcast yesterday, I had a project called Silencio. They're doing noise pollution data. And again, just like their Web 2 equivalent, who's been building for forever, they've far surpassed, just because this is the virality of this and the incentive. So you can grow very quickly and you get this data. But maybe talk more practically. You've given a couple of kind of general examples of what that's used for, but maybe walk me through specifically how the data is used.
Yeah, so the data is used by people who are doing anything that's high precision with GPS. Eventually, it'll be used by all consumers in all walks of life who have a GPS receiver in their phone or in their car. But today, the classical applications are farming, drones, construction and survey, what they call machine control. We've been working with a bunch of groups in robotic lawnmowers, and I think that's going to be a very major industry coming up. Yeah, all different kinds of robotics, autonomy. I think ADAS systems in automobiles that do assisted driving. All these things benefit from higher precision GPS, and those are the use cases. So it spans everything from kind of we also wholesale data back to other GNSS infrastructure providers. So everything from sort of semiconductors and GNSS chipsets through to end users in civil survey and geodetic science. So it's a huge horizontal set of applications, from very high-end specialized things to very low-end basic, hey, I just want my GPS to be better and faster on my phone.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like most of the applications you mentioned there, it's like the accuracy is really important. But I mean, especially like I can imagine farming and like mowers and stuff where an inch matter, it's like 10 feet, that kind of sucks,
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But 1 inch of, or a centimeter of accuracy, that's pretty big deal. So, if there is, a robotic lawnmower company, or if there is a car navigation company or whoever, are they connecting to you and you supply them the data? How does that whole relationship work?
So we have two basic business models. There is wholesale data, where people buy access to the raw streams. And those are typically people who are already running GNSS networks. and or have a huge volume of users. And then we have our resale model. And our resale model is definitely more working with people who are selling equipment or using equipment, who have customers that use equipment, dealers and distributors of equipment. And they basically get access to the full network. They sell subscriptions to the data and they share the revenue that they generate from those subscriptions 50-50 with the network. And that's a great value proposition for them because they don't have to sort of commit to a huge infrastructure play up front. They get the benefit of it. They're taking the service to the end customer. They're supporting the customer with whatever piece of equipment or tool that they're selling, making sure that that whole value chain is working right for them. And they're leveraging the Geodnet network then to get a recurring revenue component, which is shared with the foundation.
So compared to your Web 2 analog, is your data able to be sold cheaper? Is it just more robust? Like why are they going to go with your data versus the other?
Yeah, typically through that reseller model, it ends up being more profitable for them and a lot less expensive. So, I'd say here in North America, we're recommending annual pricing for professional applications and the $400 per year. And so they're keeping 200 and we're getting the network is getting 200, of which then 80% of that is used to buy back and burn tokens. So of that $400 that the end user is paying, say the farmer's paying per year, $160 of that is then going back through the buyback and burn mechanics of the protocol. And that works very well in the professional applications. When you start getting into consumer applications, the price points go down. The performance expectation also goes down a little bit. And so we have we recommend for that sort of an IoT pricing, but it's all based on this 50-50 rev share. So our Web 2 partners are incentivized to, bring that service to customers, get as much as they can while still growing their business. And then the protocol benefits from it evenly. And what's pricing in North America is different than Europe. It's going to be different than India. So we think it's sort of trying to say some of the things we've looked at in other DePIN protocols where there's a very fixed price per unit of data, whatever that is. That's very attractive and maybe the right solution 5 years out when things are fully mass market and commoditized, but it leaves a lot of revenue and protocol benefit up front when, a factor of 10 cheaper than the existing solutions is good enough to get a lot of traction and drive a lot of adoption. No need to go start off a factor of 100 less. That's at least our reasoning on it. It's working very well so far, but these things will evolve. I mean, the important part is when people use the network, that drives the buyback and burn, right? That drives burning of the token. That's really the key mechanic to keep the supply and the demand side in line and the network growing stably.
So how across the globe, everybody who wants to purchase and needs locational data like this, how big is that? How big is that space?
Well, I mean, the overall GNSS market today is 200 billion and growing very steadily. I think it's predicted to be 500 billion by 2030. Location is in almost every device these days. The number of these devices that want to use different types of automated features that depend heavily on location accuracy is growing exponentially. So I think that the pie is quite huge. And we have GeoNet in a way has a big first mover advantage because this functionality is just brand new to the marketplace. The ability to put high precision location services into a consumer product is just a brand new concept, and we have brand new infrastructure. So there's a certain first mover and network effect advantage that Geodnet can work with in the market.
Yeah, and that's like thinking about that aspect of it is really fascinating. And I'm curious if you think about this, if you've given this much time to think, but we have lots of examples in history across startups and companies and various things where first mover advantage, it's like they become the de facto. They are the future of that, sector. You have other examples where it was too early or whatever, and it was actually the second or third movers
Right.
who had the advantage more. How do you think about that problem?
I think we're in a good spot to be at the right place and the right time. So there have been some startups funded aggressively that have raised, north of $100 million to do mass market RTK services. And I think those are interesting, and they're going to have their place maybe in some of the more safety critical things. They're going to get some traction. But over time, I think the DePIN model is going to really win. The need to put this type of capability into consumer devices on a mass market level in places where infrastructure is tougher to deploy. Take India, for example. I think a DePIN model is going to really pull out there. And then over time, the markets love to back sort of winners and back single solutions just to avoid the complexity of like, oh, which one do I pick and does it work? And so if we can drive the network size up and focus on the quality of the data, make sure that the quality is there, I don't see any reason why this decentralized approach wouldn't be the winning approach. I think it's got a very, very good chance. Over time, right, we saw on the internet that before the internet was such a standard, there were all kinds of proprietary networks. I can't even remember their names. It's back to when I was almost a kid. There were these different smart talk, all this stuff that all died to the decentralized standard, which is the internet today. I believe the same thing is going to occur in our space.
Plus, you talk about other markets globally, especially ones that maybe are not across the board as affluent as like the U.S., where we crypto nerds get excited about a few $100s of profits from one of these things right now, and your company is very small still. It's got tons of room to grow, which is why I'm really excited about it. But even at its current stage, a few $100s of tokens could be like life changing in other places where this is deployed, where you actually really need that data. So I think the DePIN model is finally kind of gaining the traction it needs to. And so with that, I'm like, where do you think traditional world, the Web 2 world, when do they start picking up on what you're doing and going, we should be doing this too? When does that happen?
I think pretty soon. I think that it still isn't quite there with the Web 2 guys, which is good news for us and the Web 3 community, because we really want to establish as much network effect advantage as we can prior to waking up the sleeping giant, so to speak, on this whole DePIN thing, because they have nefarious and evil ways to do things, and they've perfected that through the first generation of the internet, or the first 2 generations of the internet. They really perfected how to squeeze out the little guy. So I think it's good that we have a little bit of a breather here to build these networks up, and maybe people think it's a bit strange at first, but yeah, I think they are starting to wake up. And our field, as I said, we've had a pretty warm reception, because it is a very technical problem, and we're solving it in a way that's very easy for them to see that it works. We publish the data in a more open and transparent format than anyone else in the industry. We have like a QC database of station qualities that I don't think you can get anything like that type of data product from a Web 2, which really helps people plan and understand how good the service is, where it is, in a completely open and transparent way. So I do think they're waking up. I think you'll see we're focused on, for 2025, we're doing a big kind of broader launch of the Geodnet services at CES across the different, drones and robo-mowers and mobile phone applications, because so many people come to that show that are in the Web 2 ecosystem building these types of products that use location. And we'll do our part, what we can, to try to wake it up. But I think across all the projects, whether it's Helium, whether it's Demo, these things are all waking up Web 2 to, hey, there's a different way to build infrastructure and deploy capability in the world. And I think it's super exciting. I think infrastructure is so important to economies. You just think about what good, infrastructure is a super key word, infrastructure network. When you build an infrastructure network, whether it's roads or whether it's high accuracy location services or whether it's connected vehicles, you're really providing transformative capability to the economy. And I think that's something that definitely the whole crypto community broadly hasn't really waken up to. I think DePIN is still, investors get it, but I think the broader community hasn't seen just the real power that these DePIN networks are going to unlock over time.
When you're having conversations with, the traditional world, or at least just people who are looking for this data, I'm curious, what do you lead with from Geodnet, and then do they all have the aha moment, or they get it, or like what does that look like?
Yeah,
right now?
so the big sales points are coverage, cost, and capability. We have all 3 of those really strong value propositions. Capability is the uniformity of the stations, the fact that they track all the satellites. These are all big winning points for us. And then the things that we have to overcome is just a little bit of skepticism. Hey, that station might be on somebody's roof. What if they move? Well, of course we track that and we know that. We take the station offline immediately within seconds of any movement detected, or even less than a second. And we have real-time monitoring. So we try to assure them that we've thought through the different things that in their mind is like, it's scary, it's decentralized. I'm used to going to a brand name company that puts their stamp of guarantee and says they control everything. Guess what? They don't actually control everything. They don't control the power grid in, uh, rural Kansas. I mean, they can't, right? There's a lot of things beyond their control. Just because they have a big brand, that doesn't make them all powerful, right? So it just takes a bit of education, but I think that process is going really well. And I think the whole DePIN industry is working through those messagings and figuring out how to align tokenomics to create incentives that deliver high value data products. This is super key.
Plus, I feel like those, in those conversations, if you're going to be talking to people who are savvy enough to, or curious enough to, investigate this a little bit, we'll see through, the illusion of we control everything in the traditional model, and then see the benefit of just a massively bigger and better data set. I mean, do you feel like that is true?
Indeed, and some of these Web 2 networks haven't worked super well because they don't have enough stations. The stations are old. They say they have this, and then people go out and test. They get to a location, and it doesn't work as advertised. So there's a bit of actually Geodnet creating a network that actually truly works. So because it's been in mostly high-end applications, there's been some patience with the stuff that isn't there at the consumer level. So if you were trying to deploy a consumer product to do this high accuracy location before Geodnet, it was just very, very difficult to get it done. People still, and especially in the United States, because the networks are not that great, even the Web 2 networks, a lot of guys are still taking a base station out, setting up their own temporary base station to do a job, whether that's farming or whether that's running a drone or whether that's on the construction site, just because they found that the network isn't reliable enough, the existing network. So I think that's kind of the state of our industry. And so Geodnet is in some ways just enabling this precision to actually really work. And that's that first mover advantage, why we want to build the network out to past 10,000 stations as quickly as we can get it, work out all the kinks. There's still, things we can improve on station reliability, where we want to push the mining community to do better, but we find even our firmware, there's so many little things and interacting with all the different ISPs to really perfect it so that we can get, 4 or 5 nines of reliability. It is possible, and we're not all the way there. And as we make each of those little incremental improvements, just adds more and more value and sustainability to the network.
And I think the growth and everything is like, I feel like that's going to just win, in the long run. When it comes to actual hardware, you're talking about, the firmware and constantly kind of tweaking that and making sure it's as good as it can possibly be. On the hardware side, was there a lot of consideration in the pieces of hardware you either chose or designed for this application? Is it pretty future-proof? Is it upgradable? Like, how do you think about that part of the problem?
Yeah, I think that we definitely, with the current hardware, have done a good job of future-proofing it, the miner design, and we'll start to open up more of this stuff and further decentralize this stuff over time. But we wanted to get out a piece of hardware that somebody at the National Geodetic Survey could look at and say, yeah, verily, this is as good as the traditional Web 2 stations, and do that economically. So a lot of engineering went into that. The antenna is calibrated by the National Geodetic Survey. It puts out data that is indistinguishable from a $20,000 station in terms of quality. So it really is top of the line. We've used and are pushing mini PCIe as a form factor for add-in cards to add additional capabilities. There are things we do think that is a good path to upgradability. But in general, yeah, we feel that the current stations going out are really going to last for a long time.
I mean, I think that's a good testament to what you're doing if you feel like the current network is more reliable than the traditional one, or it's at least heading in that right direction, and you're going to have this more robust data set, and you're going to have greater coverage. It just seems like that will slowly trickle down as kind of a no-brainer for these other companies.
Yes. That is, I think it's the and and the and and the and. All those things over time that it just becomes why would you do it any other way? And we're not, the Geodnet is a foundation. It's a true protocol. It's working towards true decentralization. And I think that also gives people confidence that this infrastructure is going to be around for a long time. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than our team. It's over time will be even bigger than the community of satellite miners because there'll be validators. There'll be other participants that are staking in the ecosystem. It's bigger than any one network participant. And that creates a sense of that this is infrastructure that can be counted on, that will last, hopefully a millennium,
So obviously, in the world of blockchain and crypto, the DePIN model has been a huge asset and a huge reason why you went to the world of crypto. Beyond that incentive to build the network, is there advantages to being a crypto project versus a traditional one?
I think so, because I think some of the staking mechanisms and proof of stake systems can address some of the back end pieces, that what we call a service provider and the validation of the data. That's something that we want to decentralize. That will create another level of robustness. The distribution of this data, because it's real time, right? Go back to real time kinematic. Latency is very important. So the distribution of the collection points and distribution points of the data itself that comes from the miners should be decentralized. That's going to improve performance, improve the censorship resistance of the network, all of those things. So there's a lot of other aspects of blockchain that can be relied on. Another one that I'm excited of, I don't think it's quite happened yet, but there are things like DePIN coordination layers between IOTEX, Witness Chain, what Peak is doing, that may also provide ways to create financing and infrastructure development globally, where in places where even the current Geodnet miner looks out of reach from an affordability point of view to put up, but long term, the value it's going to create is going to be huge. So, things we've tried a few things, not all of them have worked as well as we would like, and so we're still looking. And I think other DePIN projects and community are working to solve some of these problems that will just further take a benefit. So there's the whole Web3 blockchain provides really fundamental building block technologies to build something like a decentralized infrastructure network. And it's more than just a token incentive to put up the station. That's certainly very important, very basic one. It's where we started. But there are many other utilities that a token like the GOD token can provide, and that other players in the DePIN market can help support.
And right now, are you a token on a chain, or are you your own chain?
We are a token on chain, so it's an ERC20 token. It is on Polygon, and that has worked well so far. We are so excited about all the different things that are happening in DePIN in the crypto space, that infrastructure is being built, and we do plan to take advantage of different utility, different types of networks, coordination layers, streaming layers, all these things we're going to pull in over time. We just start with a fairly narrow focus to make sure that as we put out the supply side, we can quickly get the demand side, because one of the things we don't want to do is just be so all in on crypto and so early that we forget about the Web 2 side, because that is where the economic benefit is today. That's where the utility is today. Over time, I think all these things like Web 3 is probably going to just become a very de facto type of technology we interact with for everything, and there won't really be a Web 2 anymore in some sense, but that's a ways out. So to bridge that time, we do need to focus on some practical things that use Web 2 and use Web 2 marketing techniques, sales techniques, to get revenue into the network in the early days.
Yeah, you just mentioned Peak Network, which I'm a fan of what they're doing. I mean, they're building a layer one just for DePIN. Is that a compelling thing that you might consider in the future, going to something that's laser focused like that?
We're looking at a lot of things. We've been interacting with a lot of other crypto projects. Polygon is a great chain as well. I think Ethereum compatible is great. I think Solana's done a lot of amazing things. I don't have a view on it today, but we are interacting with a lot of different projects, and maybe the most important piece is we've introduced a governance system that we're really excited about, that really ties into the location NFTs, and people who set up a high quality node really have a real say in the future of Geodnet, as well as staked token holders, as well as locked token holders, all kind of convert to what we call a VE NFT. This is going to let us evaluate these different opportunities to collaborate and work with other blockchain projects in a decentralized way through the governance process. And that's our first major step towards what I look at as a kind of 1 to 2 year roadmap to actually achieving true 100% full decentralization of the Geodnet network.
Yeah. So, walk me through the staking a little bit. How you utilizing that, or how's that work right now?
Yeah, so the staking right now, we have the staked super hexes. So where we don't have coverage and we know we need coverage, there will be a super hex introduced. That's a set of 7 hexes. For that super hex to be activated so that it can produce the higher rewards that it gets, it needs to be staked. And so that gets, first the super hex gets created, then it gets staked. Once it's staked, the rewards level will double or quadruple in that hex. And then the first person that puts a miner in there, um, will start to earn those higher rewards. So it's a way to say, hey, we need to incentivize. Not every location is the kind of economics exactly the same. And so one sort of reward system isn't perfect. The staked superhex system allows us to kind of adjust that, incentivize coverage where we need it in a decentralized way. And it balances the additional distribution of liquid tokens to the mining with the staking to sort of create balance within the ecosystem. Because at all times, you just can't throw out too much token emissions too early on, or you can get yourself in, things don't always go according to plan. And that is one area where a project can kind of get itself in trouble, is too much supply too early. So we, are always thinking about ways to create a long-term incentives around the network growth where everyone's aligned and nobody's thinking about this as kind of a, you know, get rich quick scheme, for lack of a better word. That is not, we're trying to build a set of incentives that will create great value, tremendous value over a period of time, but unlock that value in a way that can kind of keep up with the real world, right? And that's something I think in general crypto kind of struggles with. People get so excited so fast, goes to the moon, and then the next thing comes along and everyone forgets about it. That's not great for infrastructure, right? We wouldn't like that in our airports and our highways. We don't want that. I think DePIN has to avoid that type of thing so that it can create the sustained value that really unlocks real world potential.
Yeah, and especially talking about like the how much do we reward and this and that, like that balance. That's the struggle for a lot of these projects, and I'm sure it's not an easy one to tackle.
Super tricky. Needs to be thought of. Our system is one of the most deflationary out there. We're very lucky, and the actual physics of the network only needing like one station per hex to actually serve everyone in that hex. So there isn't this need to constantly refresh the supply side, which lets us put in place a more deflationary set of tokenomics that I think a lot of the other DePIN networks can practically do. Because if there is a need to sort of like in a wireless network, the more people that use it, the more nodes you need. And a mapping network, you need to constantly refresh. Here, we are actually at a root level using the surface of the earth as a scarce resource. We don't need millions and millions of nodes. And so first movers who get into a hex, establish a good station, they, in a sense, by getting that location NFT, they're getting governance rights, they're getting the long-term highest rewards rate of the hex. They're really, taking advantage of the scarcity to, create long-term value for themselves as a miner.
What is the ideal number of antennas across the globe?
Well, theoretically, we did a calculation that said to have perfect RTK coverage over the entire surface of the Earth, you'd want 100,000. Now, in the near term, if we can get to 10, 20,000, you're going to have virtually 99% of the places, even in the developing world where there's reasonably good revenue to be had over the next couple of years, you're going to have all of that covered. So I think in the near term, we want to pass 10,000. That's going to be a huge next milestone for us. Get to 20,000, you're going to be really a fully functioning network that nobody can say, hey, I don't have coverage. Everybody who wants this can have it. And then long term, to support science applications, to support, I don't know, the future of the world when a lot of these places get developed over time, 100,000 nodes would be absolutely theoretically perfect.
Very cool. So let's talk again about like the data and people buying it. Do you currently have customers who are buying this data?
Oh, yes. We have customers in construction, survey, ag. We have people in the GNSS space using our data to power their services, drone scanning, first guy in drone delivery coming along. Definitely a lot of these things, robotic mowers, multiple customers in that space. We're adding, I think, sort of a new B2B customer about once a week right now. And the pace, the close rate is getting better and better. Seeing a lot of different applications come up. We had a really cool marine one we're going to announce soon. We have a small backlog of things that we haven't put out there. Just before coming to Consensus, I stopped in Dallas, got a little diverted by the thunderstorm, but ended up in Dallas working with a customer doing robotic mowers, doing teams of mowers. This is really cool. They're not putting out one mower. They're going to parks and to schools and with professional landscapers as their sales channel. And they're going out, taking the mowers, the robots with them. The landscapers take the robots with them, put them out 5 at a time, and they team mow. So, you got one guy who's doing some of the other tasks that can't be automated by the robots, but he's amplified by a team of robots to do what was an environmentally not very friendly job, right? Mowing with a gas-powered mower, now electric, robots doing all the work. Really incredible. And I think these small robots, I think a lot of this autonomy stuff, we're just at the tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen and be, I think, in and of itself, super transformative.
Yeah, those little engines for like landscape equipment are terrible for the environment.
Yeah, they're noisy, they stink, nobody likes them, right? So there's a better way. Geodnet's part of that story.
I want to see it. I want to watch a time-lapse video of 5 robots doing it. That'd be pretty.
Well, we have it's coming.
Oh,
it's coming. Cool. Wait about a week and a half. We got drone footage of them going. So there's an interview. It's going to be really cool. A lot more to come there. A lot more to come on the robots.
Very cool. Do you currently, are you public about revenue information?
Yes, we have a Dune dashboard that has the revenue burn on it. We're working on getting more metrics on there, but the revenue burns updated every day. So.
And where are you at today?
We're about 800K ARR, growing nicely. I think the back half, not financial advice, things can change, do your own research, all that stuff. But in general, a pipeline for the second half of the year and next year looks great. A lot of things that have been lined up, even in the bear market, starting back in mid-2023, we started to pick up traction with customers. These things get signed, they start doing integration. First customers start using it. Takes a little bit of time, but we have a lot of pieces in place, a lot of deals already done, a lot more on the horizon. Very excited for the prospects of the network.
Yeah, well, at that amount of revenue at this stage, I feel like million, 2 million, all that's probably going to happen sooner than later.
Yes, I think the prospects are very good, but again, not financial advice. It is a crazy world. We politically unstable, all these things. God knows what's going to happen. So all we can do is focus on the technical execution, making sure the data is reliable, and working with the mining community to help build out the coverage. These are the basics. These are the fundamentals. Very hard to beat fundamentals. When you can go to a customer and say, we have the modernized network that tracks all the signals, can deliver the accuracy and quality you want. We have great coverage and the cost is good. It's a very good value proposition. It's just a flat out, very good value proposition to people who want to use GPS for productivity tools, for autonomy, for mapping, for augmented reality. There are going to be gaming applications built on top of Geodnet because of the high precision. You think about, trying to do some of these augmented reality gaming experiences, you need that nice, tight, registration between the digital world and the physical world. And cameras are an important part of this too. It's not, GNSS is not the only technology. These solutions, do sensor fusion. So they integrate the benefits of the precise absolute accuracy that Geodnet provides with things like camera, LiDAR, accelerometers, gyros to produce an overall super reliable, high-speed tracking of what you're doing in the physical world with the digital world.
So let's look forward. What is the rest of 2024 and into 2025 look like in terms of things you want to, goals in terms of what you're trying to build?
Yeah. So the big thing we just introduced is a governance, a platform. We're going to put some new proposals on that from the community as well as from the team to help build out new things. We're focused on enabling the small robots is a huge focus. You're going to see a lot of activity from us in the area of small robots, and then consumer mobile experiences. As we were just talking about, this sort of what can I do with a mobile phone? These mobile phones are putting in dual band GNSS chipsets now. We can provide very high accuracy location on them, proof of location, different types of capabilities there. And again, it's just continuing to march forward with the deals that we've been doing in farming and construction, drones, the traditional use cases, still a lot of room to grow there. And then finally, developing world stuff. We're, again, very excited about the infrastructure that we've been put in place in India. We want to repeat that in Southeast Asia. India is a huge country, so there's still a lot of work to do. Southeast Asia, Brazil, these are very important. All of LATAM is really a very important next step for us. Africa, mining, farming starting to enter in, some of these precision farming techniques starting to enter in there, drone usage there. So a lot of room to grow on the supply side in those areas. A lot of new applications to focus on. Developer tools to make it easier to do some of these new cutting edge things. One of the great things about Geodnet, I would emphasize, is the traditional applications are highly standardized. The protocols are standardized. We support the standardized protocols, so it's easy for customers to just sign up for an account, test it out, start using it, integrate it. We have a good API for enterprises. All the tools they need to scale it out are in place or in beta for people to use. But some of the newer applications, we need to build things like SDKs for the mobile OSs to use our stuff. So those are things that are on the roadmap that I think will help stimulate adoption of Geodnet for new types of things that never have had the benefit of precise location before.
The antennas, the hotspots, you call those space weather stations?
You can think of them as a space weather station. We came along with a term about a year or so ago that seemed to be easier for people to understand, called a satellite miner. So we call it a satellite miner as the primary name, but it's also a space weather station. It's also a GNSS reference station. People, can call it whatever they want. The bottom line is you put it up on your roof, it observes these signals, gets them onto the backbone internet, and that's where the value is provided.
And of these satellite miners, do you have a goal over the next year of how many you want to see deployed?
I'd love to see us get over 10,000, and I think that's certainly by Q1 2025 looks doable. We've been, I think, on a pace to exceed that, but hexes are starting to fill up, so there's that consideration as well. Maybe that as more of the easier hexes get filled, it slows down. I really don't know. It's hard to predict, but 10,000 is a great number. We're super thrilled that we've passed what's been reported in the press as the biggest networks on the planet, and we're above that number. And there's no slowdown in sight at the moment. Things every time we think it's gonna slow down, it picks back up, and people keep deploying, and that is fantastic. That is really, really powering the whole value proposition of Geodnet.
Yeah. Well, I am a fan of Geodnet. I run my own, antenna at home. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm excited about what you're doing. If anybody else is interested, I will leave links to all their things to check out, the website, the Discord, and all those different things to check out. But Mike, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. Been great to be in Austin and see you here, and super to be on the show.
Yep. And thank you very much for listening. See you in the next one.